Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Jam-Packed Business Made Easy with AI. And I'm your host, Flora. And today's conversation is a little different. Most of the guests on this show are entrepreneurs using AI for automation, marketing, sales, and productivity. But today I wanted to really explore the human side of AI. Speaking of being human. So what happens when someone whose work is deeply rooted in creativity, vulnerability, and self-expression starts using AI tools? My guest today is Bryn, formerly Bryn Daylor, but she recently got married. She's also a woman's coach who specializes in helping women find and express their voice through writing and creative expression. Bryn and I actually met a while ago in a writing workshop in Austin, and I've also had the privilege to work with her as my own life coach, so she knows me pretty well. In this episode, we talk about why creative expression still has to start with being human, how Bryn uses AI as a refinement tool rather than a creation tool, the difference between automation and authenticity, and why developing your voice might be more important than ever in the age of AI. So if you're someone exploring AI but wondering how to stay human in the process, I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. Let's dive in. Hi, Bryn.
Hi, so good to see you.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here with me. You and I have the pleasure of knowing and loving each other outside in the real world. And I'm gonna welcome Bryn to do her own introduction. However, I'll share my quick experience. Bryn and I met through a writing workshop in Austin, and then I've had the opportunity to work with her as my life coach, and I introduce her to people as like my writing coach, my manifestation coach. And the reason I was so excited to have you here, I mean, so many reasons, but mainly, I like to think of who are the people that don't come to mind immediately when I think of AI, right? And you as a writer, you as this magician, you as this, manifester, I was like, how does Bryn use AI in her every day? And sorry for the long-winded intro. I say that because at Jam AI, we get really excited about how people are using AI to be more human. So Bryn, please introduce yourself. Tell us how you got to where you are, what you do, and how you do or don't use AI in your life.
Thanks so much for having me. And yeah, I'm so excited to be here and to chat all the things, human and AI tools. And I would best describe myself as a women's coach, but I specialize in expression. And I really love helping women at the intersection of their deepest gifts and how to share those gifts in the world. And most of the women that I work with, when they come to me, have a desire to feel more expressed in their lives. And that expression can look in all different forms. Usually, the expression that I tend to support them in is in writing. And so there's a lot of overlap with writing and AI nowadays. But there's usually this gnawing feeling that they come to me with, which looks like and sounds like, I don't feel like I'm using all of myself in the world. And maybe they're really successful in their careers, even have like loving, supportive relationships, but feel like there's this emptiness when it comes to their creative expression. And that's why I love getting to watch them blossom and developing this self-trust and ability to write their way into a deeper knowing of themselves first. And then the world gets to see that, hopefully, second, when they start to share their writing and gifts with the world. And I just see that when we express ourselves in one lane of our lives, that expression typically, not always, but typically bleeds into other parts of our lives too, from our romantic relationships to our career, because we build this intimacy with ourselves that is just so palpable and felt. And then that self-trust and feeling of really knowing ourselves starts to bleed everywhere. And so I got to this place because I was very unexpressed for most of my life. And I don't believe that any of us come into the world that way. I believe that it happens culturally, societally. A fifth grade teacher says something to us, and all of a sudden we think that we're dumb and bad and wrong and can't use our voice. And it's wild to see how sometimes those beliefs trickle into our adulthood. But for most of my life, I felt very hiding in plain sight would be the way that I would like to describe it, where I wasn't sharing my gifts. Really struggled to shine. I was terrified of outshining others and mostly just wanted to sort of blend into the background. but I didn't because there was that gnawing feeling again, like I was just referring to of, but I want to be able to have a podcast and I want to be able to have a business and I want to be able to help other people. But I couldn't do that if I wasn't willing to let myself be seen. And so I kept choosing people that suppressed that, whether that was in my career or romantically, until I finally broke the pattern. And I really broke the pattern when I started writing and expressing myself online. And that was where I started to build my following, where women started to really trust me because I wasn't pedestalizing myself. I was very much humanizing myself and saying, like, these are the real struggles I'm going through. And here's how I'm working through them in real time. And let me just like rip open my chest and show you all my insides, and you get to decide if you want to stay or not. Because I was so tired of not expressing myself. And, I really think it was funny. My fiance actually was just telling me, he's like, I think your business is going to be, in a lot of ways, AI proof because so many people are about to be, as we know, in interesting ways, not having jobs or jobs that look the same anymore. And one of the things that we really can't use AI for is building intimacy with ourselves, with the world, right? Like that is such a human experience to be able to share your insides externally. And who knows, maybe that shifts and AI just continues to get better and better until we can't tell the difference, which I'm sure that's going to happen. But for now, at least, I feel really confidently that there's this human factor of vulnerability and intimacy that is just impossible to duplicate as I'm able to see. And that's where I love supporting women and is them getting to reveal that part of themselves first. And then of course having amazing tools like AI to be able to support that process, but more as a refinement tool versus a tool of like, this is your expression, instead helping it to help the expression take shape, if that makes sense.
And is that how you're currently using AI? Are you using it as a refinement tool?
Totally.
Okay, how
One of
so?
my, oh, go ahead.
No, I just how so?
Yeah, so one of my rules, at least for myself, especially as a writer, because I know authors who have written books with AI. They've just completely used the tool to help them produce a book. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, but I do think that it comes down to what's your goal. And if your goal is to build intimacy and bring a gift into the world and have a deep level of yeah, expression and vulnerability, then I personally have guidelines around the way that I like to use AI. And so whenever I'm writing something, especially something that's like really from the heart, a core expression could be something about my relationship or a letter to a client, something that feels really tender and vulnerable. That whole expression from, my inside out onto paper is fully mine to begin with. I don't use AI in the creation of that. And I feel really strongly about that because there's this feeling that I have where if I use AI to help write for me, it just never feels like it's mine. Like it feels like, for lack of a better phrase, cheating because it's not my words and my original creation. But how I use it to help me refine is I'll take a piece of writing, I'll put it into AI, and I'll ask it to spot things like blind spots. Like, if you didn't know me and you had never read any of my work before, what questions would you have for me? So I use it to help spot things that, as a creator and a writer, I may not be able to see in my first draft because it's so close to me. So I'll have it ask me questions. I use it for basic editing like grammar and punctuation. Everybody's up in arms about the M dash now because they're like, that's the delta sign, which is funny because writers have been using M dashes since the beginning of time. But yeah, I mostly am using it for refinement. So asking questions, helping me to spot blind spots, helping me to look at my work and take me deeper than I could possibly go myself. And again, though, that's through great questioning by prompting it really well. And I'm sure you've seen this through your own usage and talking to people. I really see the quality of questions I ask as the quality response that I get back.
1,000%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm always asking it to help me go deeper in just the first draft than I could take myself.
So I think this is unique. Well, first of all, do you ask it to ask you questions?
It
Or are you
depends.
asking it?
Sometimes,
Okay.
yeah, it depends. I usually not try to not be vague with ChatGPT or other forms because I've just noticed again when I give it too much wiggle room, it comes back pretty elementary
Yeah.
versus if I prompt it well. So like I said, the one of the questions that I use pretty often is if you didn't know me, like what questions would you have about this piece? Or asking it to spot gaps in details because sometimes I find that when we're so close to our own lives, we forget that there's a lot of assumptions and things that are just given because it's our life, and we forget that people are missing context.
Yeah.
So I'll ask it to help me in support of what context in this piece is missing that I couldn't previously see for myself. Um, to make the piece more rich and more meaningful and more clear, because where we lose the reader oftentimes is if their brain has to start using calories to figure something out. And
Yeah.
it's funny, oftentimes the best writing isn't necessarily even like the best in terms of like a literature perspective where someone's like, wow, she used all of these amazingly big words and she can clearly sound like she is so well written. But what I find to actually usually be the best is one that is both real and sounds like how the writer would actually be speaking. And so the realer and sometimes simpler I can get with my stories, sometimes the more profound they come across. And what people don't realize is it can be quite challenging to be that clear. I think we often think that we're a lot more clear and compelling than we actually are. Um, but I'm always refining that process and cutting away the fluff. And I think that also comes from my education background, which, I love taking complex topics and making them simpler. And AI is a great tool to help streamline that process.
Totally. I think, it's not unique. I talk to small business owners with this podcast all the time, right? So, and I dig into how they're using AI in their personal, mainly their professional lives. And, you know, you're also a small business owner, right? And what I find really interesting right now is I would say 90% of who I talk to, they use AI first and then they refine it. And I really love this differentiator of you saying, no, 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 no. I really want to continue, flexing my muscles here.
Yes,
And then I'll come in and ask the right prompt. And um,
absolutely.
I love I actually listened to your third episode of your podcast today. And you were talking about this idea of like being super clear with your vision, being super clear. And in this situation, it's like being super clear with your prompt, and
Yes,
um,
yes, no, true. That's fascinating too to hear that most people are doing it the other way around, but I think that's how we stay connected to our humanity and also that sharpness that you were just referring to. Like the feeling like I can creatively think and yeah, use my brain to have that first rep feels really important. And I'm sure a lot of people would be like, that's dumb, a computer can do it better. But I'm a creator through and through, and I know that about myself. Have you ever taken the wealth dynamics? Have we talked about this?
the wealth of dynamics.
Wealth dynamics. It's
Writing it down.
a phenomenal quiz.
Cool.
And the quiz, it sounds exactly what it's like. It's a quiz that helps you assert the vehicle in which you make wealth the easiest. Like, what is your unique vehicle for creating wealth in the world?
Cool.
And I took the quiz, I don't know, years and years and years ago, and I'm a creator. So, exactly what it sounds like. Like, my best form of generating wealth is to create things and to birth them into the world. And as a creator, it's so important for me to stay connected to the creative process. And in fact, it feels like if I use ChatGPT for that or AI in any way, it robs me of the feeling that I deeply crave, which is to birth something. The parts that I don't like, which I think AI is really wonderful for, is to help me activate and use the parts of myself that I'm not the strongest in. So the analytical, logistical, looking across trends, pulling data, refinement, those pieces I don't need to be using because that's not my zone of genius. So I'd much rather use a computer for that.
I love it. I love it. So, well, okay, I'm just gonna call myself out. So, so life coach Bryn, um, you asked me to work on an assignment about really identifying my values, and
Yeah.
you asked me to do this a few times because I just was like, I don't know, um, and I told on myself. Well, I want to go to ChatGPT and I want to do the exact opposite of what you just said. I want to say because you say, act like you don't know me. I wanted to say, based on everything you know about me, what
Right.
are my values? And life coach friend said, do not do that. Um, so, and I caught myself that this, I wrote this down because you said, you want to connect to your humanity and that sharpness. And of course, I use AI, right? Like, I don't use AI to the extent that the majority of people in our community do, because I mean, to me, I'm fascinated in the human aspect of AI, and so many people in our community, they're really interested in this automation, and that's awesome, right? And I just love this idea of like sharpen, because I catch myself like the other day. I was looking for a fish filter for my girl's fish tank, and AI like wasn't working for me. And I was like, how am I supposed to look at my options without looking for that? And it was embarrassing, Like,
Oh, yeah. It's funny because I think at the end of the day, I want to stay flexible. And I think that that's where the most powerful humans come. Flexible in my ability to feel, flexible in my ability to use tools, flexible in my ability to be resourceful. To me, the best entrepreneurs are flexible and can adapt. And so that's why I think it's so important to understand and use AI. And I know many people who aren't using it at all, which just blows my mind. So I always want to stay connected to like how my work can become more accessible. And I'm also always optimizing for impact too. Like if something is going to give me greater impact and help me to reach more people, I'm so for that, but not without losing my humanity in the process. And so, yeah, I think like anything, if we notice ourselves using vices where we no longer feel empowered, then that's an opportunity to dig deep and go, okay, well, if this vice were to disappear, which is something outside of my control, if we're looking at again, like what can we control? We can control our own resourcefulness. But yeah, if ChatGPT goes down for the day and you rely on it for everything, then we're screwed. And so, how can we stay flexible and connected to our core? I think is an important question.
Bryn, I don't think I even looked at the boxes of the fish filters. I was just fully relying on ChatGPT to assess my options for me. And this idea of, oh, I could just like look myself wow. Um, so, I do get the opportunity to sit with small business owners, and it is exciting for me to learn how they not only are using it now, but also how they plan on using AI in the future, right? So I mean, and that varies, right? So I mean, some people are like, yeah, I want to automate my email sequence. I want to, and I that would surprise me if that was your situation. But is there something in the back of your mind you're like, you know what? I've heard this is something you can do with AI because, like, let me, obviously AI is so much more than just ChatGPT or any other LL. But what is
Totally.
that thing that's kind of interesting to you about it in the near future?
Yeah, a couple of things. I mean, um, this isn't that futuristic, but one thing that did feel exciting for me was using it to help me analyze for hiring. So I just hired my first employee a couple weeks ago, and so excited, which is wild because I've had previous businesses and teams before, but for whatever reason, I just stayed a solopreneur for quite a while with this current business. But I was really ready. I'm like, okay, it's time. And I had two front runners. And I'm a people person. I love talking to people. And I just noticed there was a part of the interviewing process where my intuition was only taking me so far. And I had both of these prospects take the wealth dynamics assessment along with a couple other assessments. So I had them do things like their human design. I had them give me things like birth time and astrological charts. I mean, which again, for maybe the average business owner, they're like, what in the world are you talking about? But to me, it's important is to really understand the person that I'm bringing on so much beyond their ability to tackle something like a task. And so I took a bunch of assessments and I took both of them and I put them into ChatGPT and I asked them to analyze based off of the role that I was hiring for. And it gave me a really thorough in-depth analysis of the individuals and helped me make the decision so much more clearly and confidently. And that was really powerful to be able to see the two women for all of their different pieces and parts and strengths and weaknesses compared to the job description that I had created. And honestly, I would say that ChatGPT really did help me to create a seamless hiring because of that. So I could totally see how using it to analyze data of people was really fascinating for me. And I do that also in my writers groups. I have women fill out intake forms and I'll upload those intake forms and I'll say things like, analyze, what are the top 3 needs of the women coming into this group. And while even though I read those myself, the way that it synthesizes information is so powerful. So that's really great because those groups only will get bigger over time. And I'm not going to be sitting here analyzing 1,000 intake forms by myself. But the other thing that I was actually just talking to someone about was I'm going to be starting ads soon and bringing people more and more leads into my business. And she was telling me about some AI tools that are really phenomenal at conversing with prospects. So they're in the DMs, but they are trained to use my voice and to know the specific questions that I would ask anybody new coming into my space. I'm skeptical because I don't know what that would look and sound and feel like. But the idea of it just being to collect data from the sense of what do women want? It's all coming back to how do I serve greater and how do I serve more deeply and more profoundly? And there's just only so many hours I have in the day and so much capacity that I have. And so if that's going to allow me to serve more deeply, then I'm very curious about what that could look like as well.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that. And
Of course.
I guess final question, do you allow people to use LLMs for their writing in your writing groups?
To use ChatGPT for writing? No, that's a hard no. As a, like a, it's maybe some still do it, but it would just strip them of that like really beautiful intimacy that I was speaking to at the beginning. And again, like if they want to go take their final draft and run it through for grammar and punctuation, God knows I'm terrible at that. By all means, go for it. But the second it starts changing your voice, it really, I think, strips her of her creative process. So no, not allowed in the writers groups.
Okay, cool. Well, where do we find more information on the writers groups?
Yeah, so honestly, Instagram is probably the best way to connect with me, but also my website, bryndaylor.co. I'm getting ready actually to open the doors in 2 days for my next round. And yeah, it's called the Writers Rebellion. And I chose the word rebellion very intentionally because I think women expressing themselves is an act of rebellion. The closer they get to their core and what they're really meant to share, the more vulnerable it gets. And let's be honest, it's not really vulnerable to just dump a prompt into ChatGPT and say like, "Hey, can you write this for me?" So I'm constantly dancing between, where society is going and also how do we stay connected to our humanity in that.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure. I adore you. Thank you for having me. Yes, bye. Thank you.
Bye.